What's up, everybody? Lou from Hypocritic here at PAX East 2025. We are here with Dave from Riot Games, the game director on Riftbound. Thanks so much for taking some time.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for talking to me.
So, in your own words, tell us a little bit about Riftbound.
Yeah, so Riftbound is the League of Legends TCG, so that's trading card game, a physical trading card game you play with your friends. It's kind of a social multiplayer game. We designed it to be played 1v1, 2v2, and 4-player and 3-player free-for-all. And it kind of brings the champions that players know and love from the League universe into a strategy card game.
So a lot to unpack. So let's maybe start from the top.
Yeah, of course.
A physical trading card game, which is something that we see a lot of across the industry, and there's a lot of trading card games in general where you'll see both physical and digital. A lot of IPs getting into that space. So there's a lot going on. With the sort of mechanics that Riftbound has in mind, how do you sort of differentiate it in that space compared to others?
Yeah, great question. So there's a few things. One is, this is true of other IPs as well, so it's not unique to Riot or League of Legends, but we have a lot of champions that we know we can kind of translate their identity into the strategy card game space. The second thing is we've built a game that's kind of from the ground up to be social multiplayer. So there's kind of location control, and there's like a fun little build-up period where you can kind of like risk-free make an army. And so that's a space that I think both is conducive to kind of new gameplay, where there's like mobility mechanics that can bring some of the fun gameplay from League into the card game space. And then you can kind of teach friends to play in a little bit lower pressure environment.
And that teaching and learning of the mechanics is kind of a hallmark, I think, in our demo, where it was pretty easy to pick up and play and learn. So I imagine there's a lot of very deliberate mechanic design that goes into making it approachable. Building a card game from the ground up is interesting. A lot of people maybe take it for granted. A lot of TCGs are around forever. You just assume the mechanics have been there, but they have to come from somewhere.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that everything in this game is novel. We kind of looked at what's being done in the rest of the industry, what's worked, what hasn't, and kind of picked mechanics that we thought worked really well with the champions from League, worked really well with this kind of multiplayer feel. But I think we found something kind of new and unique in that combination. One thing is our resource system is, it took us a little while to find it, but in the end, I think, when you play it, you'll see it's kind of like a 2-part resource system that really lets you focus and make really exciting plays and really powerful kind of moments in the game.
And with some of those mechanics, in the process of sort of developing and iterating through them, because I imagine it was quite an iterative process to start to figure out what those core sort of pillars of the gameplay is going to be like. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that development process yourself and how you kind of sort of put the team together to start to develop the idea, bring it through to what we have now?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I started. Actually, this game was pitched originally by the Riot China team, thinking that there's opportunity in China for a deeper strategy card game, especially with the League IP, and then kind of brought that to me as kind of like a resident card game expert at Riot. I used to work at Wizards of the Coast on Magic, and so what I did was I pitched a game, first social multiplayer, because I thought that was an interesting space to be exploring, especially for a China audience, but then also looking at, hey, there's actually a space here where we can like make it easy to learn, bring in players, and so my direction to my initial design team, so I had up the design team for the project, as well as kind of interact with like our marketing and publishing team and our creative team to just make sure everyone's kind of marching in the same direction. And so the direction I gave was, hey, let's start with these pillars and just explore, basically. So we started making a bunch of champion cards, making these battlefields, which you see when you play, trying a bunch of different kind of resource systems. And we probably iterated 2 or 3 months on that, just like jamming different systems, different mechanics from different games. And then we put it in front of players. We actually play tested with players just to see, do you like these things? Or does this feel like League of Legends to you? And at the end of that, we had enough information that we're like, okay, we can kind of solidify these systems, clean up the edges, and that was kind of the creation of the game.
And a great way to kind of work through it and get it all sort of ironed out. Player feedback and getting it in front of people, because it can be, one thing in your head in the lab, right, and then you put it in front of someone, it becomes something entirely different. Yeah. How did player feedback throughout the development process shape what we ultimately now have? What sort of feedback did you get? Were there, notable things that you changed, maybe that you didn't expect you would need to change? How did that go?
Yeah, totally. Player feedback is like super important to me. I think it's the most valuable resource you have when you're a designer. And so in the pitching process, I actually pitched to executives, let's make sure we have milestones where we play this with players, get their feedback directly, and then integrate that into the process so we can iterate. So we had an initial play test that was a little bit smaller, another one a few months later, and then we took it to the Teamfight Tactics event in Macau at the end of last year. And at each one of those points, we were looking for things we knew that we wanted information on, like, hey, do you like this resource system? Do you feel the champions are good? And then there were things we didn't know, right? One thing that came up a lot, especially after the Teamfight Tactics event, was, hey, this game, it feels good to play, but it doesn't look and feel like League of Legends. It's kind of missing that element of the kind of creative of the world. And so we actually went back to the drawing board a little bit on the visual design of the cards and spent a few months just trying to get that right based on the player feedback.
And that was actually exactly where I was going. So working within such an established and beloved IP like League of Legends, where it's very clearly delineated, and maybe people have certain expectations going in about what any sort of expansion of that world is going to look like. What was the process from a game design perspective, sort of working within, let's say, the constraints of what's already established with League to make it appealing to players who already know and love the IP and want to see more of it?
Yeah, so one huge benefit I had was some of the initial designers on my team have made champions for League of Legends style games for Legends of Runeterra and League of Legends the PC game, and so we had a lot of expertise from there. And so like making individual champions feel really resonant, really true to that experience was something that we had early on, which was great. And then the other piece of it is just really trying to like find the people who love those champions and talk to them about, hey, like what is it about Yasuo or about Jinx that you really love? What do you want captured about that identity, and then kind of iterating on that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And when you start to put all of this together and you walk through the whole history of it, I imagine that your own experience, like you said, you were at Wizards of the Coast for quite a few years in game design, came in handy. So when you sort of look back at your career thus far that led you to ultimately, starting to design Riftbound, how did you draw upon that experience in your previous roles and your experience in card game development to help to bring it to life?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is I've been a player of these kinds of games for such a long time. So even beyond my career, it's like, you got to think like a player to really make a game that players are going to love to play. And so that was something that was huge. And I've been playing Magic for a huge amount of time. I played a bunch of other card games. And then I worked on Legends of Runeterra for quite a long time. That's Riot's CCG digital card game. And kind of drew inspiration from the way that game and that team kind of explored and crafted the world of Runeterra, which is the League of Legends universe. And then part of my work kind of since Wizards of the Coast has been working in collaborative game development, like video game development, which you wouldn't necessarily think that translates to a TCG, but a lot of the pieces of the process for TCGs is working with partners. Riot doesn't have experience in the physical game space that much, so we have to find partners that can help us out, distribution, sales, teaching people to play at a game store, and that kind of stuff is like all collaborative game development. Like in my opinion, that's all part of the game development process.
And that is maybe something that players don't have a lot of lens into, right? The sort of what goes into physically creating a game in terms of that manufacturing, distribution, training people to play it and get it out there. What were some of the things about that process that surprised you specifically with regard to Riftbound and its development and getting it out there, like you said, with Riot not having a ton of experience in that space?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Riot is full of a lot of smart people, but one of the things that I think is really smart about Riot and Riot leadership is they kind of know what they don't know in that space, right? So it's like, okay, we need to find really solid partners here. So we found a partner in China, Shining Soul. They've helped bring Pokemon to China, and they also are like really talented kind of creatives in and of themselves, and they work with the stores in China. And then in the US and kind of rest of world outside of China, we found UVS Games as a partner to kind of help shore up the kind of things that we don't have a lot of experience in. So a lot of it has become, okay, we kind of have a sense, and I know this a little bit from my time at Wizards, other people who have worked in physical spaces before, of which there are many at Riot, just not enough to like have that expertise in-house, kind of know like, okay, we kind of know that we need these things. And then we go to partners and figure out, okay, is there a good way for us to partner with these people and learn what we don't know, give them the resources that we have to try to figure out how to make it best for players.
Right. Knowing what you don't know seems to be the theme, and is such a good asset to have when you're coming at this. Your role specifically, game director, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of players may hear that term, but not necessarily understand what it actually entails,
right,
and what sort of the day-to-day process looks like of actually performing that role. Obviously, every day is going to look different, but from a high-level perspective, can you describe the sort of actions and decisions and things you do in that game director role?
Yeah, so probably the simplest and shortest way to put it is I'm responsible for our strategy of the game and the product. So what that means is I run the design team, and it also means that I provide direction to, meaning like our high-level goals and what we care about, to all of the creatives involved. That means visual designers, that means people who are making packaging, it means people who are making the card frames, it means all the designers making all the mechanics of the cards. And then as kind of the lead I guess, strategist in some ways of the game. I then am the point of contact for all the other groups that are making the game, our partners, as like I just described, Shining Soul and UBS, people internal to Riot who work on marketing, communications, people who are thinking about, hey, what does our digital ecosystem look like, all that stuff. So I'm kind of the person who is then taking that vision and trying to make sure everyone is lined up in the same direction toward the best experience for players.
And now you know. Demystified. Last question then.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of people looking to get their hands on Riftbound and experience it for themselves. Where can players go to learn more, and when is it expected to launch?
Yeah, so I would say probably the best place to go is the Play Riftbound socials or riftbound.com, our website. Pretty soon, I think, within a month or so, we'll have a lot more information about the game, especially start showing off maybe new cards and the rules of the game and our plans for what we're going to do with organized play and so on. That's coming soon. Don't quite have it yet. And then in terms of where you can go to play, we don't have widely available demos yet, but we will be working on getting that to stores, to retailers, hobby stores all around the world. And then around later this year, in fall, maybe October-ish, we will be getting the game into the hands of players in English-speaking territories.
All right, well, lots to look forward to.
Yeah,
Dave from Riot, thank you so
Appreciate
much,
it.
and keep it tuned here to Hypocritic for more from PAX East all weekend long.
Thanks. Hello. I like card games and other things.
That's just vague enough. Just vague enough to work.